Welcome to the BELATED Tech Channel's 42nd edition of the Space and Tech History Rewind. We are reviewing the milestones that occurred on each day in the week of March 29th through April 4th in space exploration, science, and technology. March 29th, 1983, Tandy introduced the TRS-80 Model 100, one of the first and certainly the most popular notebook computer on this date. The portability, simplicity, and built-in modem of the Model 100 made it a hit with journalists who could write stories in the field and transmit them back to their offices. It was in fact not designed by Tandy, but Kyocera, who sold the rights to its machine after poor sales in Japan. Tandy eventually sold over 6 million Model 100s. Like the TRS-80 Model 2000 desktop personal computer, the TRS-80 Model 100 in fact did not run TRS-DOS and could not run any title from the TRS-80 software library. Rather, the Model 100 ran a proprietary OS that could boot Microsoft BASIC, a terminal program, an organizer, and a text editor. However, the TRS-DOS-based TRS-80 Model 4, released at the same time as the Model 100, could read Model 100 tapes, making it a popular accessory to that system. Model 100 line sales continued until 1987, and the TRS-80 branded computers were sold until 1991. March 30th, 1986, the Soviet Union started development of the Tupolev TU-2000 spaceplane on this date. The TU-2000 was a direct response to the Rockwell X-30 single-stage spaceplane, which also began development that year. NASA anticipated that the X-30 would be able to fly from Washington, D.C. to Tokyo in 2 hours via a suborbital trajectory. Tupolev worked on the TU-2000 for 6 years before coming to the same conclusion, already reached by Rockwell, that 1980s technology was not up to the task. The idea of a single-stage spacecraft was dismissed by aerospace companies for 30 years until being revived by SpaceX in 2012. Originally referred to as the BFR, the Starship interplanetary spacecraft is designed for single-stage launch from the Moon and Mars. SpaceX has launched 10 partial and full-sized prototypes through 2021 and hopes to reach orbit by the end of the year, although a booster rocket called the Super Heavy will be used to lift the Starship out of Earth's gravity well. March 31st, 1971. 5 Soviet cosmonauts, Nikolaev, Bergovoy, Shatilov, Yeliseyev, and Tereshkova, act as delegates to the 24th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union on this date. There were 5,000 delegates from 90 countries in attendance. The keynote speaker was Communist Party General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev, who droned on for a painful 5 hours, promising that the imperialist lackeys would be wiped out one by one until communism triumphed over the whole planet. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1992, 2 years after the 28th Congress. Only Tereshkova remains in Russian politics, serving as a deputy in the State Duma as of 2021. There have been several NASA astronauts and payload specialists who have become or were politicians. Mercury astronaut John Glenn held a seat in the U.S. Senate for over 2 decades and ran for president in 1984. Apollo astronaut Harrison Schmitt served a single term as senator. Apollo astronaut Jack Swigert won election to the U.S. House of Representatives, but died from cancer before swearing in. Sitting Senators Jake Garn and Bill Nelson flew as shuttle payload specialists. And finally, shuttle astronaut Mark Kelly won a Senate seat in 2020 following the death of longtime Senator John McCain. April 1st, 1960. The astronauts for the X-20 Dinosaur spaceplane were selected on this date. The group included Neil Armstrong, Henry Gordon, Pete Knight, Russell Rogers, Milt Thompson, Bill Dana, and James Wood. The group was assigned from a pool of active U.S. Air Force and NASA test pilots. There were originally 10 candidates, 7 from the Air Force and 3 from NASA, who were chosen in August of 1959. The X-20 never flew and was canceled in 1963 when NASA and the U.S. Air Force determined that the spaceplane's small payload capacity severely limited the craft's usefulness. However, Much of the technology developed was eventually used in the Space Shuttle and the X-37B unmanned spaceplane. Only Armstrong eventually made it into orbit or beyond, although some of the other X-20 astronauts became X-15 spaceplane pilots. April 2, 1994, the Fen Yung 2 geostationary weather satellite exploded during final checkout on this date, killing one worker and injuring 20 others. The satellite was about to be mated to its launch vehicle when the mishap occurred. The Fen Yung satellites were purportedly designed to provide weather services for the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games. The accident meant that it would be 3 years before the CCP would attempt to launch the first Fen Yung satellite. That craft reached orbit, but failed in 1998 and had to be replaced by another unit launched in 2000. 2 more units were launched by the Olympic Games, and 3 more were launched afterwards. All 6 remain in operation. April 3, 1966, the Soviet space probe Luna 10 became the first spacecraft to orbit around the Moon. It was launched by the USSR from an Earth-orbiting platform on March 31, 1966. Luna 10 would operate for 460 lunar orbits before its battery failed on May 30, 1966. NASA's Lunar Orbiter became the first U.S. spacecraft to orbit the Moon 4 months later. It was designed primarily to photograph smooth areas of the lunar surface for selection and verification of safe landing sites for the Surveyor and Apollo missions. It lasted 577 orbits until impacting on the lunar surface, having taken 229 photographs and transmitting them back to Earth. April 4, 1968, Apollo 6 was lifted to orbit on a Saturn V rocket from the Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A on this date. The payload was an unmanned modified Block 1 Command and Service Module, CSM-20, and a Lunar Module Test Article, LTA-2R. After orbiting for several hours, the spacecraft returned to Earth and landed in the mid-Pacific, about 50 miles uprange from the predicted landing area. A normal retrieval was made by the amphibious assault ship USS Okinawa. It would be the last unmanned Apollo flight. Apollo 7 would reach Earth orbit with astronauts in October. Before we get to the current event of the week, we wanted to see if you enjoyed this 42nd episode of Belated Tech's The Space and Tech History Rewind. If so, click that like button. Did you agree with our choices, or are there other events that were better? Go ahead and share with us by dropping a comment below. And if you have suggestions for an event in the future, we'll take those too. We'll credit events we pick for future videos to those viewers that post them. We hope you have been enjoying our content. Have we earned your subscription to our channel? If yes, and you have not yet taken the opportunity as of yet to subscribe, please take a moment to do so now, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss upcoming videos. We want to continue delivering great content to you. You can always unsubscribe, and subscribing is free. On March 24, 2021, OneWeb launched 36 more broadband internet satellites on a Soyuz rocket from the Vostochny Cosmodrome. The launch was funded by a $400 million capital raise from SoftBank and Hughes Network Systems. SoftBank was an original investor in the pre-bankruptcy organization. The company is majority owned by the UK government and Bharti Global. It was the second major launch of satellites for OneWeb, who hopes to field a 648 satellite constellation. OneWeb's business model differs from that of SpaceX, its major competitor for broadband satellite internet services. The company intends on selling coverage only to other businesses and government agencies. SpaceX has designed its service for consumers as well as businesses and government agencies. OneWeb is working off $1.4 billion in post-bankruptcy funding and believes it will need another $1 billion to complete its first-generation constellation. Links to some of our most recent episodes can be found in the description section below. You can peruse our entire 200-plus video library by looking at our playlists, which conveniently sort videos by subject. We announce all new videos on our microblogging accounts, as well as in the community feed for this channel. Want to know how to navigate our channel content? We refer to RetroTech and innovation documentary segments as episodes. Coverage of current events in space exploration, science, and technology are labeled as shorts. Space and tech history are documented in an anthology called Milestones. And gameplay recordings can be discovered on the BELATED Tech Gaming channel in videos called walkthroughs and side missions. Stay connected by occasionally checking our Instagram feed, where we post content from our upcoming episodes and from episodes past that you may have missed. And finally, join us on our Facebook and Minds pages, where we cover current news and events related to channel content. Thanks for watching.